I can't tell you enough how important it is for you to set boundaries early on in any relationship that you're beginning. Power is probably one of the most underestimated things. It's not something that is still, but something that is fluid. There's going to be times in your life when you have the most power and times in your life when you're going to have the least power. And specifically in the context of you getting a job, right? Think about this, right? You ever been in that situation where you need a job, you've been applying for a job, you've sent out applications, and month after month, week after week, you get a response, and it's the common saying, unfortunately, or due to the amount of applications we receive, we have to reject your application. It's a sucky feeling, right? And then you spend more time, so you start fixing your resume, you start reaching out to career coaches, they start giving you advice, you're spending money, and then finally, right, you get a response back from a prospective employer. And they say, hey, we'd like to hear more about you. And you're excited. In that moment, you are very strong and weak at the same time. You're very strong because, one, the employer is interested in you. This is an opportunity for you to negotiate. But you're very weak because in that moment, you're filled with a lot of emotion. You're filled with joy. Someone is finally choosing you. And you got to be very careful with that feeling of feeling that someone is choosing you and make you feel like the best thing in the world, because in that moment you're a little bit blindsided. And I'll give you an example, right? At work, when you get a new job, one of the first things that they do, they hand you this giant document, right? This document is probably like 100 pages. And what do they say? They say, hey, look, we need this back in about 2-3 days. And you know what's inside of it? It's all your tax stuff, it's applications, it's onboarding. It's an onboarding application, right? And sometimes included in these onboarding applications are NDAs, non-competes, things that you got to comply with. With the NDA, you already know that you got to keep quiet for a certain amount of time. With the non-compete, they're basically limiting your ability to do certain things right after if you leave the job. And in that moment, when you're starting that new relationship, I tell you, you're strong. You're so strong. You got to come back to the negotiation table and say, look, you're limiting my ability to do things after I leave this place, right? You might look at a particular non-compete and it may say something like, oh, you can't reach out to clients till 2 years later after you leave the job, or you can't do something similar within like this particular kind of area after you leave the job for a certain amount of time. And you need to go back to the table and contain your power and use your power, because that's when it's the most. That's when you have the most of it. And you got to say something to the effect of, look, if you're going to limit my ability to do things after the job, then you're going to need to compensate me right now while I'm in the job. So you might ask for more money. Or maybe money is not something that you particularly care about. Maybe you may want something like a more of a hybrid schedule, right? So my point is that you got to go back to the drawing table. The same thing goes with the NDA. They're limiting your ability to say things about the job. And these things are common practice, but in those moments when you get the job, you're just so excited. You're so excited because somebody chose you, and you got to get that feeling out of you, because number one, it's not that they just chose you out of 100, a lot of people. They chose you because you earned the position, right? It's not like they're doing you that much of a favor. Like you have your credentials, you worked hard, you got it off of merit, and you got to keep that in mind. So in those moments when you get that new job and you're filled with excitement, and you're given this onboarding paper, right, which is drafted by the company's attorneys. Listen, guys, these companies, they will spend money on attorneys to have all these documents laid out for you to sign at the beginning. They understand how you feel. They know you're excited. And they also understand this one thing. They understand that you don't want to make any noise or ruffle any feathers. They understand this kind of stuff. They understand that you're going to be easygoing, right? They're expecting a few people to get out of line, but for the most part, they're expecting you to not act out. And they're hoping you don't, right? Because they're hoping that you just you sign all those documents, you get it back to them in time, so you can start your job, right? So you get your benefits. I've made this mistake in my life, and that's why I'm talking to you about it right now. And I want you to avoid that same mistake that I've done, because I realized, like, sometimes in my own life, I let go of my power too early on, right? I got to realize when am I most strongest and when I'm most weakest. And it's not a matter of like strength or weakness, but it's more so leverage, right? It's like at what point of the relationship do you have the most leverage? And this applies to many parts of your life. I won't get into it like family, relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, etc. But I'm specifically talking right now just about your professional relationships. You know, there are times in your professional relationships when you have the strength, and there are times in your relationship where you're weak. Remember, I told you in the beginning, power is fluid. So once you realize that, right? Once you start realizing, okay, when am I the most strongest? You'll be able to capitalize on that because the other side is going to do it against you. So, you know, I hope this was sort of helpful to you in anything that you're doing. This unsolicited advice, that I call it, but I've seen it too many times as an attorney where people are making the mistake of signing these documents like I have done in the past and not being able to get that new job or to be able to do something after the job that they really want to do. And I was thinking to myself, well, rather than hold all this information in, let me just give it to you guys because I think it may be something that's helpful. Look, a wise man once said, I think it was a smart person said, I don't know how it really goes. I think a smart person said, look, you learn from your mistakes, and a wise person said you learn from the mistakes of others. Look, learn from me. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes in my life. And what I could tell you right now is one of the things that I wish that I'd done, especially early on in my career as an attorney, was pay attention to when I'm one of the most strongest and when I'm the most weakest. And I do this all the time now on behalf of clients, especially if I'm looking at like contracts, documents, etc. I'm gonna look to see at what point was my client the strongest and the weakest, right? And to advise them to help them out. And I think you can use the same kind of tool that I use now as an attorney just to help yourself out in situations in your life. Even though I've been talking about like in a professional context, like work, etc., I think this really applies to just different parts of your life that you're experiencing. You know what I'm saying? So I say all to say, just like, I hope this helps you. Look, if any of the information I said in the last couple of minutes was helpful to you in any way, I kindly ask that you just, like the video, drop a comment, let me know your thoughts, let me know what you think about all this unsolicited advice. Should I keep it to myself, or should I say things from time to time? And then also, share the video. It not only helps me know that you're interested, but it also helps people out there also discover the video in that sense. But in anyways, I want to thank you so much for your time, and thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.